Got it. And here they all come, a little late. Sorry, everybody. We've been getting ready for this, and it's 3 minutes past the hour. So thank you for your patience. We appreciate it. We've got a few more people coming in, and we'd ask you if you can just check to make sure that you are muted, because with the number that are on the phone on this call. And what I would ask, and just the regular housekeeping, is that if you have any questions for myself or the MWs, please type them into the chat, and then we will address them, not necessarily immediately, because sometimes we're in the middle of something else, and we'll get to that as quickly as we can. I can see that there are some watch parties going on with lots of wine, and that's a good thing. So one of the wonderful things about being an Opimian is that we always seem to have wine around. I don't know what's that about. So hello everybody, thank you for coming. I know that we've been a little late getting back to the Masters of Wine, the Masters Case tastings. The vast majority of that was because of supply chain issues. A lot of the wines took a long time to come into Canada, and some of you have had these wines for quite some time, but some of you haven't. So just so you know, we try and wait until everybody in every province has their wine before we do these, so that you can actually have them in front of you and taste along with the Masters of Wine. And so that took a bit. And then by the time they all were in Canada, then we were in the midst of COVID in the staff, and I won't go through the laundry list of issues that we've gone through. So nonetheless, what we've done now is we've added two to each of the next 2 or 3, so that we can catch up, and then we'll be off to the races and be doing these on a regular basis. So thank you everybody for coming. I wanted to thank David Markovich. You may not have met him. He's our new, well, not relatively new head of marketing, and he's running the board for us today. So thank you very much, David. Nice to see you. And we have 2 Masters of Wine. One is representing as our Master of Wine is Jacky Blisson. Hi, Jacky.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
And Jackie's in Montreal right now, and
Yep.
she's joined us to talk about all 6 wines today. And for the first 3 wines, although Michael Palij is one of our Masters of Wine at Opimian, here he's talking about the 3 wines that you got in 286 that are the Terra Firma that he has a great deal to do with making. And so he's here to talk specifically about those 3 wines, and then we'll go on to talking about the Jones wines after that. I know that it's not ideal that we're doing 2 of the sellers at the same time, but if we don't do this, we'll never catch up, and we'll always be behind. Otherwise, we could do them weekly, I guess, but I'm not sure we'd be able to do that. So thank you, Michael, for joining us. Michael's actually in Sardinia. Have I said that correctly?
Sure. So yes, you have. Yes, it was Sardinia, but yes.
Yeah, Sardinia, and he's always somewhere else in the world. Every time I talk to him, I did want to tell the story, and he's given me permission to do so, that I did an event in Edmonton for members with these 3 wines that we're going to talk about today, and the rosé is like this. You guys have it with you, so you'll know this, that it's a very pale rosé, and I wanted to be able to speak to that. So I called Michael. I don't know, it was 5 o'clock my time, so 11 o'clock in England, and Michael was already in bed, and he picked up and was more than happy to provide some information, which he'll also provide with you too. So
I wouldn't have done a Zoom, Michael, just to be clear on that.
and that pleases me greatly, just so you know, Michael. That's great. All right, so I normally tell a bad joke at the beginning of these, as people know, but not while we've got MWs on the line. I think they're far more important than I am. So I'm not going to
we love to hear a bad joke.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, Jacky. I don't have one ready. Well, no, I'm not good to do it. So what I'd like to do is, first we're going to start with the Terra Firma wines, and hopefully you've got them in front of you. And over to you, Jacky and Michael, and I'll interject if there are any questions that I might be able to help with.
I think it's more over to Michael. I mean, Michael is such a cool story. I love it if you could start off. We were just chatting beforehand about how it is that a Canadian found his way over to Europe and started blending wines from across Italy.
Yeah, so it's a long story, and I didn't start with the blending piece. So I started off with just doing research in Italy. I was actually a buyer back in the day. I mean, before I was an MW, I was a buyer for a chain of shops. And back then, and I know it's so embarrassing to admit this, but back then, 25% of wine sales in the UK were Liebfrau milk and Lambrusco. And so I was dispatched to Italy on a Lambrusco buying trip, believe it or not, but that's how it was back then in 90, whatever it was.
Unite.
Yeah. So, and from then on, I just kind of fell in love with Italy, because what I found when I was out there was this whole host of amazing wines that just weren't exported at all. You know, they drank them all themselves.
And such
so I spent more and more time. Sorry?
Such amazing value from across them.
And they were extraordinary value back then. Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, as time went on, obviously, we started importing more and more wines into the UK. And then you get to know people and you start chit-chatting. And I'd been to Sicily. So my very first trip to Sicily was scary. It was there was this sort of sense it was real bandit country. You know, this was probably back in 90, I don't know, maybe 94 or something. And on Etna, everybody knows how trendy Etna is at the moment. There was one producer, right? One producer on all of Etna. So like you want to do the Etna DOC, right? That was like half an hour and you were done. You had to drive on to the next one. So so I got to be really good friends with a co-op, but they're quite a cool co-op, and they've got actually 3 different wineries. And that's well, I guess it's at its simplest, it's geographic, but it kind of distills down into them only using one winery essentially for their whites and then another winery for their reds is kind of how it works out.
Yeah, and but this is Colombo Bianca.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. So they starting with the Catarato, I actually, such is my love of these, I actually brought them in my luggage to Sardinia so I could do this. So I actually do have the wines here. So Catarato, as many of you will know, is one of the original Marsala grape varieties. So Marsala in the 70s was like Liebfrau milk or Lambrusco in the 80s. You know, you just couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah.
And everybody was drinking Marsala. And in fact, it was partly because of Marsala's popularity that sherry kind of dipped. And so, of course, then Marsala, you know, went totally out of fashion. I don't even think you can hardly buy it anymore.
It's like a cooking ingredient now.
Yeah, exactly. De Bordelais still makes a really good one, but it's pretty thin on the ground, right? And so, anyway, all the people who had vineyards where they had been selling those grapes for Marsala production, like, well, what do we do with them now?
Exactly.
So it's you know, you can source good value wines, and that's one of the things which we did, and that kind of coincided when I started going to Sicily. It coincided with this revolution that was actually started by Planeta. Now, Planeta, Diego Planeta was the president. Well, he was a member of the Settosoli co-op, but he was also the president.
Okay.
And he did what no other Italians, Garibaldi and Diego Planeta, the only 2 who've ever managed it. He actually got everybody pulling in the same direction. So he got 6,000 Sicilian members of a co-op. Think about that for a minute, to focus on quality, right? And I don't think anybody lost their life. So that's pretty amazing.
He made them an offer they couldn't refuse.
Yeah. Hey.
I can make that jokes too, Michael.
And then other co-ops were watching, you know, the other co-ops were like, well, what are they doing? And, you know, they're doing really well and they're selling their wines and blah, blah, blah. And so the other co-ops then kind of fell into line over time, you know, fell into line. But I remember, so my very first visit, I ended up going to a co-op in the South, and they had, you walked into this building, right? You went in and it's like, there's nothing inside it, right? It's just an empty building. So I said to the guy, well, where do you do the fermentation? He said, oh, well, we didn't have electricity until like 2 years ago. So we dug these huge concrete tanks in the ground, and then the heat would naturally dissipate, right?
Right.
So I said, okay. So I said, so is that what all of these hatches are in the floor? He said, oh, yes. So, you know, I pulled one open, and sure enough, I looked down, and there was just, you know, the top level of the liquid, right?
So you were just standing on top of the fermentations.
Exactly that, yeah. But when you went in, it was just It was this floor with these little hatches, you know, rows and rows of hatches. So I said, so you do the fermentation here? He said, oh, yes. And I said, you know, and you do the maturation? He said, yes, we take it out when we need to bottle it. So that was kind of going through my mind, like, how did they clean it up? How did they do the racking? And anyway, so then I said to him, I said, gosh, I said, so everything's underground. They must really be horrible to clean. And he just looked at me.
Clean?
What's that? So, and that's how they did it. So Planeta then sort of led the way, other co-ops fell in behind, and they started using, I have to say, EU money very wisely to get new equipment. Yeah. And honestly, in the space of like probably no more than 5 years, you know, max 10, and Sicily just turned around.
Massive quality revolution in Sicily.
Massive.
Yeah.
And you know, there is no fairy dust there. You know, this is just using stainless steel, temperature control, keeping track of things, you know, sensible winemaking. And the biggest problem always was getting the producers to grow less, because they had been used to, you know, and I remember talking to producers, and the son would take me aside and say, you know, I'm trying to do the green harvest, you know, don't tell dad. Because, you know, they were all standing there with their arms folded going, you know, over my dead body, will you ever do a green harvest?
Throwing money on the floor.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. So, but, you know, all that's changed now. And what hasn't changed is there's still tons of white grape varieties. So when we started making Terra Firma, I used Inzolia because I really like the aromatics in Inzolia. But then with climate change, and we just couldn't get the acidity right in Inzolia, because it kind of goes.
It's a very hot part of the island where you're growing, so you really need a white grape that keeps its acidity nicely.
Yeah. And Inzolia kind of does, and then it falls off a cliff. You know, you go back the next day and it's gone. So, and then we were acidifying and to make up for that. And then for me, and I thought, like, you know, any of that kind of intervention is not really where I want to go. So it's like, okay, well, let's acidify, but we'll set a limit. I mean, you can acidify as much as you want, right? But we set a limit. I set a limit of 1 gram per liter. And once it crept over 1 gram per liter, I thought, A, you're going to taste it, and B, we just haven't got the right grape, if that's what we have to do to it.
Exactly.
So we swapped out to Catarata, which is maybe aromatically less interesting, not much.
You have a griot in the tasting, what we've got today.
Okay, of course, that was for Canada. Yeah. Okay, right. Okay, so you got the.
Thank you, Jacky.
Well done. Yes. So we did the Grillo. That's right. We bottled the Grillo for Canada.
That is for our members. Those are the 3 grapes that you would commonly find. White grapes you would commonly find in Marsala is the Griot, the Catarato, and the Inzolia. And so, and each have really, as Michael, you were saying, really, really interesting perfume, but they were just never considered as standalone varieties before the sort of downfall of Marsala.
Yeah, no, exactly that. Now there's more interested in them, and people are experimenting, particularly with Grillo, with doing kind of like some skin contact. I'm seeing people do that now. Catarato has its own DOC now, which is new. And Inzolia is planted a bit up in Tuscany and so on. So, you know, they're taking them more seriously now.
Can we jump into tasting the Grillo and then sort of getting a sense of what you were looking to express with this wine, how you made it in order to achieve?
Yeah, sure. So I think the thing about Sicily that kind of makes life easy is you don't have all the disease pressure. So the only thing you really need to worry about is have the grapes has it rained enough for the grapes to reach full maturity without harvesting them in the end of July sort of thing. So and that's really the only concern. And then they're harvested, brought into the winery, and there's no skin contact here at all. So crushed, run into tank. We do use selected yeast, and it's crisp and clean winemaking. So
stainless steel for fermentation, stainless steel for aging, and then it's just a short couple months of aging before bottling.
Couple of months on lees, and that's it. So
you can really get those Griot markers, though. You definitely get that lovely nuttiness, that slight savoriness, mixing with the citrus herbal notes. And you really get the markers nicely of that grape. Subtle, but definitely distinctive.
And there's more weight to the Grillo. So that's one of the things versus a Catarratto. It's just there's more body to it as well.
And you get those lovely bitters on the finish. And whenever I explain bitters to people, they sort of look taken aback and thinking, I don't want my wine to be bitter, but just a touch gives you that lovely mouth-watering freshness that makes you want to take another sip and makes them so food friendly. So what would people typically pair with, in Sicily with a varietal Grillo?
Well, I can say that with complete and utter certainty that it's just fish. I mean, that's the thing. And I'm in Sardinia at the moment and driving around, I've been sort of eating my body weight every day in fresh fish, just plucked out of the sea on the grill. We went to this place in the north near Olbia, and I swear the thing leapt out of the sea onto the plate. That was it. Just a bit of rock salt. It's La Dolce Vita. It really is. And Sicily is, I suppose, what's the difference in Sicily and Sardinia? The Sardinians are a bit more stoic, and the Sicilians are more fiery and more emotional. And interestingly enough, Sicily, well, I guess Sicily and Puglia would be the only areas where you really see an emphasis on vegetables. So despite the fact that Italy is like covered from top to bottom in vegetables, when you go out, it's like a sin to eat vegetables when you go out. You can grow them in your garden.
You get them in a sauce, but you won't have them as a side,
You won't have them as a side, right?
Yeah.
And anyway, so Sicily and Puglia are the two areas where they do make an appearance. So, but yeah, grilled fish, keep it simple.
Yeah. With very simple, as you say, just a bit of rock salt to really keep the flavors very delicate, so it doesn't overshadow the wine. I think that's drinking beautifully now. I love lovely fresh wine, easy twist cap. That's a super wine to drink on its own, definitely, and to pair, as you say, with delicate things like that. You also brought us this lovely, very pale. I think some people might be surprised by how beautifully pale this rosé is. Blend of so on the case it says Nero d'Avolo, Sangiovese, Merlot, but I think you were telling us that Sangiovese plays a more dominant role in this vintage.
Yeah, so it is really, it's Sangiovese. It's driven by Sangiovese. So, and it's direct press, which is why the color is really pale. And I remember there were all these questions. It wasn't just from Michael. I think one of the monopolies got in touch and said, is this, are you sure this is a rosé? It is really, really pale.
I mean, you can smell it right on the nose. You can smell those lovely rosé aromas, that sort of florality, those little wild berry type notes. And on the palate as well, you get that roundness, you get that weight that you wouldn't necessarily get from white. Yeah.
No, I think on the nose, you're absolutely right. I get like raspberry, tin strawberry, wild strawberry, that kind of nice mix of red and black fruit. And it's funny, isn't it? But just the skin contact, however long it is in the press, 6 hours, 12 hours, whatever, is enough, right? That's so, and it's driven by Sangiovese. Sangiovese is not widely planted on the island, but there was some Sangiovese. It looked really smart. Thought, let's make a rosé out of it. And I think rosé, if you wrote Sangiovese on the label, people would expect, they'd immediately think, oh, well, this is like Brunello or a Chianti or Morlino or whatever. And of course it's not, because the terroir is not the same. So, this is Sicilian Sangiovese. It's never going to be Brunello.
And are all the plantings for all these wines you source in Trapani?
No, so they're all, no. So they are all over. And this is farther east along the bottom.
Okay. Still fairly warm area. And the Sangiovese in this reasonably warm area, does it hold its acidity well? Is this one of the reasons it's your primary grape in the rosé?
Yeah, it holds its acidity. I like the fruit character first and foremost. Okay. It holds its acidity. The problem there, if I'm really honest, is the yield. So the yield can just run away. The clones they planted, the clones they've got, were all planted for high yield. Right. And so you've got to, and there's, they listen, but they're also not getting paid 50 euros a bottle either. So and that's the thing where actually I think for a rosé it's perfect. There's enough aromatics going on there. The acidity is lovely, and why mess around with it?
No, you don't necessarily want it to be in a more concentrated, structured style anyway. This is a really lovely, easy drinking, fresh, crisp style of rosé that just really ticks all the boxes. And this
Yeah.
again, I imagine, is pure stainless steel, cool fermentation, couple months aging, same sort of.
They all are.
Yeah.
The formula is that, and really heroing the primary fruit character and not trying to, muck around with it.
Overshadow, right?
Mm.
Of course, yeah. No, that's
And
really
if you don't
lovely.
mind my interrupting, is that this is, I'm on my second bottle of this one because the first bottle was drunk at the last month of the pool season here in Ontario. So we
So,
sipped
no,
it outside.
Chill down. It's a treat. The other thing I think that I'm really proud of with these is how they've aged.
That's what I was going to mention. This is a 2020 vintage, and you often think of light rosés as sort of having a 18-month shelf life, and this is looking really nice.
Fresh as the daisy, right?
Yep,
I mean, I've tasted some 21s that I thought were kind of, pushing up
Getting
daisies.
tired. Yeah.
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 So
No, this
I'm
is
really
lovely.
pleased with that.
Mhm.
Really
Yeah,
pleased
you
with
should
that.
be. I was going to ask you as well. There's a beautiful, so this is a lovely label, and you've got a beautiful, I will butcher it if I try and pronounce it in Italian, so I'll leave it to you. But what does this lovely quote along the bottom
So this,
refer to?
so if you want to stay in good health, always
Oh, wait,
eat
buenos
eggs and drink wine. So
Aires.
it's a real Sicilian expression, and the label's like harkening back to the tiles.
Right.
Because there's
the
the Roman. I don't know if you've been to Sicily, but there's all the Roman. Sicily is kind of the crossroads of the Mediterranean, and the everybody who subsequently invaded the island kept everything that they found. So this amazingly well preserved Greek temples and Roman artifacts and whatever. And the big one is Piazza Marina, which is where they preserve the whole mosaic of the whole building. It's just amazing. So that's just harkening back to that.
Yeah. So Mandy just quickly wrote into the chat that in the notes that she received, it only said that Sangiovese accounted for about 20% of the blend. So can you talk about how the blend changes maybe from vintage to vintage, depending on?
Yeah, so we're trying to make a wine that's balanced all the time. And so it does. Sangiovese is where we look for inspiration.
Okay. So it might have been in the past that Nero d'Avola and Merlot played a bigger role, but Sangiovese is sort of the star, definitely in this 2020 vintage. So sorry if there was some confusion.
Right, and so I would suggest, Mandy, that was a typo in the seller offering. Yeah.
I didn't want to say that, Michael.
No, I know, but I get to it's so much power.
Should we jump onto this lovely red here, the Nero d'Avola? Can you talk a little bit about the grape Nero d'Avola and
Sure.
to Sicily and its importance for Sicily?
Yeah. So first of all, the name. So Avola is a town in the southeastern corner.
Yeah.
So Nero d'Avola, the black from Avola would be where that came from. And I call it my viticultural Superman. So Nero d'Avola, that little corner down there near Pechino, and it's right. If you go south from there, you're in Africa, right? So the winds come up, hot winds, and nothing seems to phase it. And I've seen Nero d'Avola growing right by the sea in sandy soils. I've seen it growing all over the place, and it just seems to thrive. And it's like no matter how badly you treat it, it just bounces back. And it's a great variety that has beautiful, beautiful aromatics, structure. And so this is the one which took the most blending. So half of this is from the north of the island and half's from the south. And what I didn't want was something that was coming in at 15% ABV. Because
it's a very powerful grape, and it can be very structured, can be quite tannic. And so it's finding that balance is always the key. Yeah,
it is. And I think that every time I taste this, I'm really pleased with what we've achieved.
But as you say, I mean, you barely have to bring the glass to your nose. The aromatics are just leaping out of the glass here. Oh, that lovely black fruit.
Yeah.
So
it's a bit reminiscent of Malbec, maybe. I don't know. What do you think, Jacky?
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that on the nose. Absolutely. You're getting those baked, but fresh as well. It's not entirely baked and jammy. You're getting sort of a lovely mix of fresh and baked sort of black fruit, plum, all of that. And yeah, you get a sort of a hint of a floral element like you would in a Malbec from Argentina.
Yeah, so it's me again. I wanted to talk about the food pairing that our food writer did with this one, and said it was farsu magru,
Oh
which
yeah.
I
What's
had to
that?
look up. That's
No,
and,
well,
and
I didn't do that. That's not
no,
mine.
it's a food writer that actually does this for us, and
Okay.
what I'd like to do here is talk to the membership. Is that we've had some people on Facebook saying that some of these pairings are a little esoteric, and I actually enjoy that, right? So that I see this one, I don't know what it is, and just so you know, it's a rolled stuffed beef for those of you who don't know what it is, and
Okay.
it's so easy to look up now, right?
Yeah.
About what it is, and so I've since made it and tried it with this, so it's really fun for me. And I
You
know
tried
it's
the
not the
pairing with
first.
the wine,
Yeah,
and it worked.
exactly. It did. It was a
Amazing.
really cool thing. So that's I'd be curious to see if anybody wants to write into the chat about how they feel about those food pairings in our cellar offerings and here on the Masters Case, because they are the same as the wines that the way we describe them in the cellar offering. So, but we'll keep going talking about it, but I'll be keeping an eye on the chat to see if anybody has any opinion about that, because you can tell I really like it.
So
Michael,
I
I was going to say you got a
my
lovely.
favorite would be.
Go ahead.
I'd go with lamb.
Yeah, I can see
Oh,
that for sure.
interesting.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, you got the black fruit and the blue fruit. You've almost got some notes of tar on there that are really lovely, and mix of that lovely fruitiness and savoriness, almost dried herbs on the palate that take it away from just that mono register of fruit and give it a lot of dimension on the palate. And you get a lovely compliment, Michael, from Mandy, saying she just thinks this wine is delicious and would love to see it, wondering if it was going to be coming back. I'm going to let Michael answer that one.
Which
I
Michael?
You, Michael.
Yeah.
Will we be seeing the 2021 vintage?
Yeah, that's right. We're doing what are we doing? 286. So so it'll be 306. So I don't think we've tasted 306 yet.
No.
But Michael, are you still making it? So it'll be submitted or not? Do we know?
Well, this is, yeah, I didn't, now that you've asked.
Yes.
So
you can just tell everybody, it's fine.
all right. So the contract with the winery has come to an end.
Okay.
So they, speaking really honestly, they can just sell it for more elsewhere, and what they were proposing in terms of the price, because I mean, it's a bit of a pain in the ass for them, because I'm going around blending stuff in a tank and they've got tons of tanks, and they, you know, and then I want a really good price, and I can also want access to their best juice and all of that, and they've just said they can't really do it anymore.
Right, and you know what, I think that's a great thing for the membership to hear, especially those that are in the TMC program, and that's exactly why we're doing these tastings with the masters of wine and the makers of the wine, because people are always asking us why a wine is no longer available, and there's 1,000 different reasons, isn't there, Michael?
Yeah.
And this in particular is one of them. So apologies, Mandy, but no, you better keep this one.
Catherine loves it as well, so maybe we should keep it on our radar to try and make sure we have a similar wine in the offering. I'm
going to see what we can do, but I think one thing that's worth remembering for everybody is the cost of raw materials increase, particularly for glass, but also for cardboard, and energy costs. And it's not like, making wine isn't like running a nuclear reactor or anything, but you do have a lot of heat exchange equipment. It is pretty energy intensive. And the costs are crazy. So we're seeing price increases, huge price increases.
No, for sure. And that's the thing. And if I know you, Michael, you're looking for another way of doing it.
I would. I'm so, particularly with the Nera d'Avola, that's the one for me that took the most work and the one that I'm happiest with. And I would love to keep making it, and also I put in all that time and effort to get it right. I kind of know the formula now.
Jean-Paul Bielik also says the Nero Devil is delicious. You're getting lots of comments popping up. People are loving this wine, Michael. So clearly.
Well, I shall do my best, and thank you for all of your support. I will endeavor to keep the thing going, but at the moment there's no plan B.
I think another thing that's important to mention about this wine is, you know, it is a powerful grape and it can easily get up into the 14.5, 15s. And this wine's 13.5% alcohol. So you've managed to harness the power of the grape without losing its character, but just give a really fresh interpretation of it. And I think that's really, really a well-crafted Nero d'Avola, really drinkable.
Thanks. I was in Mamoiada yesterday, which is kind of the epicenter of Cananao in Sardinia. And this stuff's coming out 16.5, you know, I mean, seriously, 15 in Mamoiada for Cananao these days. 15 is just normal.
Yeah.
You know, that's what everybody's doing. Then when they're 16 or 16.5, you go, oh, that's quite high.
Yeah. 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 Pushing
yes, it is.
Just jumping back quickly to the griot, we had a question from a member saying that they were getting notes of petrol on the nose. And Michael, would you find that common for griot?
Nope, I'm not. No, I'm not. I don't have that one here, so I can't comment. Jacky, are you getting that?
Yeah, I definitely am getting that a little bit.
Yeah.
No, I don't disagree whatsoever. A little hint of sort of kerosene, sort of petrol-y type notes, sort of. I'm getting more nuttiness and more herbal, but I can definitely see that undertone there for sure.
Yeah, and that could just be some tertiary development.
That's fantastic. It's nice. It's bringing another layer of complexity to the nose, which is quite nice.
No, that's great. So if we don't have any other questions, I know, Michael, we talked about this, and the restaurant you need to go to is about to close. It's quite late at night in Sardinia, and
but anyway, thank you for having me on, and thanks to everybody for your support of my wines. It's really great.
No, it's such a pleasure, Michael. Thank you very, very much. It's good to see you, and take care. Look forward to seeing you in January in Montreal.
Take care. Will do. See you then.
Okay.
All the best.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye, Michael.
So don't anybody else go away, because we've got more wines to try. Yeah, don't go, Jacky, especially you. We've got 3 more wines to do, so we're moving on to 287, 297. I lose track. That's right. Yeah, so with the graphic novel on the labels, it's really cool.
How cool are these labels, Michael? This is awesome.
Yeah, really, really neat. And those of you know, like we do try to get the winemakers on the calls, but I know Katie doesn't mind us saying that she recently lost her husband. So Katie Jones was unable to join us today, but we did want to still feature her wines and talk about them. And she's just such a wonderful person and such a great winemaker, as was her husband. Jean-Marc would also make some wines for us. So that's the reason that Jacky gets to talk about these all by herself.
I will play Katie today.
Yes, that's right. And I found 2 of the 3 in my cellar, and we had some trouble finding them in Montreal as well. Everybody's drunk them. So let's get on with these 3. And had you decided, having looked at them, Jacky, in what order you're going to do them today?
Yeah, I was going to taste the Grenache first, then the Carignan, and then the Fitou.
Exactly.
Carignan, Grenache, you could go in either order, really, because they have Carignan often has a little bit more marked tannins, but Grenache has more body, so it's really a question of personal preference, which one you go first with there. But what a cool region. I mean, the Languedoc region of France, so the southern part of France, we were talking about quality revolution in Sicily, but this is definitely the case in the Languedoc as well. In the late 90s, they were talking about a wine lake in the area, because up until then they were producing just massive quantities, because the workers in France easily in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s were drinking. I mean, it was normal for everybody to be drinking with their lunch, drinking with their dinner. I mean, they talked about people drinking up to a liter of wine a day. These wines were less alcoholic than they are today, but still, I mean, this culture. And then there was a shift towards, more health conscious diet and people started drinking less, and they just had a massive overproduction in the Languedoc area that they were calling a lac de vin, wine lake. And so they were uprooting, there were government subsidies to uproot like crazy. And they were also lowering yields because there just wasn't any point to producing such high volume from the grapes. But in lowering the yields and what was left of the, essentially they started uprooting in the areas that were less qualitative. And what was left was really lower yields of grapes planted in better sites like Fitou, which is near Corbière, which is where Katie is located, where you suddenly started realizing that, hey, these wines that were sort of table wines could really gain in intensity and power and become something really, really interesting, but still at a really reasonable price, because this prices sort of had fallen out of the bottom and people didn't think they were worth very much. So there suddenly became this over delivery on price, which I think is still really remains today. So we're definitely in a land where grapes like Carignan, which is native to France and Spain, that sort of triangle where France and Spain meets, and Grenache are really the stars, along with Syrah and Mourvedre in a lesser role. These are really the stars of the region. And Michael, I think you said you went to Katie's, you visited Katie's property.
So it was our first Opimian trip since COVID. And so we did it in May of 2021, 2022. Yes.
It's hard to remember what time it is after a couple of years of the COVID bubble.
And so we had 31 members along, and I know some of the people that were on this trip are on the call today. And we just had this wonderful, wonderful time. And specific to Katie Jones, we arrived at Katie Jones in our bus with 31 of us. And so then they started to ferry us up the hill in all of the vehicles that belong to the vineyard. And I got to go in the deux chevaux there. She calls it Diane. And I got to go in the little blue one up the hill. And then she had created this beautiful lunch for us under the trees at the top of the hill and right beside the vineyard. They named one of the rows after Opimian. And each of us that was on the trip got to name one of the vines after somebody.
Oh, very cool. What'd you name your vine, Michael?
After my granddaughter Frida. So there is a vine up there called Frida in the Opimian row. So it was really something.
Jean-Paul says he loves her Carignan, and yes. Jean-Paul, I definitely agree with you on that. And you mentioned the hill, they're going up the hill in the deux chevaux, and the hills are really important to this area because it's hot. We're in the Languedoc, we're in the south of France. There's that Mediterranean effect. If you're really, really close to the coast, you can get a little bit of that coastal breeze. But once you're a little bit inland, like the Corbière-Fitou area, it can be very, very hot. So these, where Katie is in the Fitou area, in these hillier areas, that altitude is going to give you a slight cooling effect, which allows a longer growing season and allows to retain some acidity. So you get these bold, powerful wines, but still really balanced with that lovely freshness that she really focuses on. And I think Katie has some really old vines on her property, doesn't she?
She really does. And they vary. And she bought, I think it's part of this graphic novel and also just about Katie's story is that she bought, she's British, but she married a Frenchman, but they were considered outsiders when they came to Languedoc. And the local co-op was pretty nasty with them. It did not go well for them at the beginning. And they persevered.
When she first moved to the south of France, she actually worked managing a co-op, managing British sales, because I was working at Gabriel for winery in the Rhone Valley at the time, and we had the same agent in the UK, and they used to talk about Katie all the time, but I hadn't met her. So it's funny how we were talking the other day about how small the wine world is.
So it is.
Yeah, so these old vines, when she decided to start her own project with her husband and really started vinifying these wines, these old vines are a real treasure in the Languedoc because as the vine ages, it'll start producing lower yields, and a lower yielding vine, essentially the same amount of nutrients is coming up through the sap into the vine, into the plant, and going into fewer numbers of bunches of grapes. And so you're getting more flavorful, more concentrated grapes, making more flavorful, concentrated wines. And that makes all the difference here. So Katie makes we should jump into the wine tasting. I'm talking too much.
No, it's never too much. When we're talking about wine, at least.
We have some, so you might be wondering why she has wines that are marked IGP, so Vin de Pays d'Oc, and wines from Fitou. So she's making wine from the appellation Fitou, an AOC appellation, so a very small delimited designated area. But then she's also blending. So Vin de Pays d'Oc is a more vast, it's a regional appellation. Basically, you can be blending from different vineyard sites across the Languedoc, you know, so you can essentially blend an area that's a bit warmer, so you're getting bigger, bolder fruit flavors, and then an area that's a bit cooler, so you're getting brighter acidity. And, you know, it's like a chef blending things together, a bit of salt, bit of pepper to get the right mix of flavors. That's what she's doing with these IGP wines and these Vin de Pays wines. And then they come in at a really reasonable price. And then we're going to taste the Fitou last. That is really going to show you what this one specific place, you know, tastes of. So it's two different expressions, really. So should we jump into the Grenache, Michael?
Yeah, let's do that immediately, because and I love the way that you've said that's the ethos of the Masters Case, is to talk about those different expressions. And so what we want the members to understand is that difference in these three wines, and why they're the same and why they're different, right?
Exactly.
That's, yes. And I did want to talk a little bit about glassware. When I'm doing 6 wines, I don't get out my big Riedels. These are our rock 6-ounce ISO glasses that we use quite often in the profession, right? When you're doing 300 wines in a day, which is crazy, is that you do these smaller glasses, and they do say that it's a good way of getting the expression of the wine quickly, right?
Yeah.
And what have you got there, Jackie?
I have I think it's probably Spiegelau. It's just it's their standard wine glass that you can use for whites and reds across the board. But
exactly.
For our everyday glasses at home, we tend to stick to this. We bring out the big glasses for fancy occasions, but these are great.
That's exactly. I mean, and that's the thing. Miriam complains, my wife, that I've got probably 250 glasses in the house, and that's and of different styles and for different occasions, right, Jackie? Just the same as wine. It's the same as wine.
We were so lucky that one of the gifts that you're given when you graduate as a Master of Wine, because Riedel, the famous glassmakers, Riedel, are a sponsor of the Institute, and so we actually get sent 4 glasses of each of their different elite glassware sets. So we have Syrah glasses and Pinot Noir glasses and Champagne glasses. It's lovely. So I have a wall of wine glasses in my office, but I
have to go back to school.
I only bring them out for special occasions.
Right.
Exactly. It's the whole reason to do a Master of Wine.
Yes, right. All right.
How's everybody enjoying this Grenache? So this is obviously an unoaked Grenache. Michael was just talking about winemaking, where you really want to highlight the grape and just highlight freshness, and not sort of bring in too bold and powerful of a structure. Then you would tend to do a sort of a fairly cool fermentation in a neutral vessel like a stainless steel tank, and then a fairly short aging period, so that those primary characters, so that's when we'll talk about a primary aroma, we're talking about fruit and floral notes, so that really shines through. So that is the case here, just a very subtle fermentation vinification process to really just let the primary characteristic come through here.
And would you agree that at the time it was said to be a medium bodied, and I always find it's kind of a medium plus a little bit. It's on the high side of medium.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, one of the things that's nice about Grenache is it is in general quite a full bodied, rounded, rich wine style, but it has quite approachable tannins. This is the main grape that you'll find in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, for example, throughout the Southern Rhone and in large swaths of the Languedoc. And its role is really its fruit, its spice, its generosity on the palate. Whereas other grapes like Carignan or Mourvèdre or Syrah will bring that tannic backbone, a little bit more of a linear quality to them. And Grenache kind of brings you that plump characteristic that's so nice.
And I'm going to put you on the spot, Jackie, because we've worked together already, but not to a great degree. Do you like single varietals more, or blends, or is it? I mean, you know what? I think I already know the answer, but I'm going to let you answer it.
What I like about single varieties is it helps you to understand the DNA of that grape variety and what it's all about. And then when you taste it in a blend, this is what we're doing today, which is fun. We're tasting a Grenache, we're tasting a Carignan, then we're tasting a Fitu that has Grenache and Carignan, as well as a little, I think it also has a smattering of Syrah and Mourvèdre, or at least one of those two in it. You get a sense of each grape individually, what they're all about, and then you see how they play together in the blend. You know, it's like almost as though you were tasting the salt, you're tasting the pepper, and then you're tasting them together in the food, you know? Right. So I really like that. Thank you, Gord. I love Grenache. Does anybody, how do people like this wine? Anybody want to comment? Or so they're saying to pair it here with a Rogagnoche, with a lamb Rogagnoche, which I think is great. You don't want to pair with anything too spicy.
Right, and he did mention mild, because you can get that one pretty spicy, right?
Yeah, exactly. But then, I mean, Grenache can handle a mild amount of spice. It can, because it doesn't have those big tannins. You never want to pair a really spicy dish with a very tannic wine, because the spice will just make those tannins feel really astringent. So that's really a no-no when it comes to pairing. But here, yeah, you can definitely handle mild spice.
And I think we should talk a little bit about the level of alcohol with spice as well, right?
That's true. That's true.
Alcohol. I was just at a dinner last night that was Indian, so I took some Riesling and Gewürz that was like 11%, just because we don't want the alcohol to. It really does exacerbate that heat, right?
Exactly, because alcohol, when the alcohol is too high, it's another reason why I always encourage people to chill their red wines down a little bit. Even more full-bodied red wines, chill them down just a little bit, because a red wine that's high in alcohol, and especially when it's a little bit too warm, it can feel sort of fiery. It can feel warm on the back of the palate, which some people like and some people find unpleasant. But definitely, if you're pairing with spice, then you can really, it starts to feel fiery and it's unpleasant. It masks the aromas and the flavors, and it just loses the brightness on the wine.
No, for sure. No,
Charcuterie is, it was definitely good with Grenache for sure. That's a great pairing. Should we jump onto the Carignan?
Please. So
Carignan is a grape that maybe people don't know as well. They call it Carignana in Spain. So this is a grape that is definitely native to this area of, where France and Spain meet. It's just sort of a tug of war as to where its exact origin lies. I think Spain might win, but this is a great grape, and it was used to be back in the bad old days when the Languedoc was just dismissed as producing, industrial quantities of Planck. Carignan was really not considered an interesting grape. People planted a lot of it because it produced high yields. And it was easy to, it was very resistant. Michael was talking about how near Davila and Sicily, you could plant it anywhere. It's robust. It can handle any conditions. Carignan was a little bit the same for Languedoc, and it produced high yields. So people loved it, but they didn't think much of its quality. And now that where it has been left, where it was now uprooted, we're starting to see a lot of old vines. And old vine Carignan just transforms when it's far lower yielding, when it's been around for a long time. These 50, 60, 70-year-old vines are producing some really expressive wines that have really sort of sinewy tannins. And it's a term I like to use because it's a tannin that is just sort of fine-grained and delicate. You sense it's there, it's present, but it's not bold and in your face. It's got a sort of a chiseled quality almost to it. Really nice fruit, a sort of a savory character as well. Just quite complex aromatically speaking, and really great on its own, but especially as a blending element.
No, and again, I think I agree with Jean-Paul that you've described that really, really well, and kind of lines up with what I'm feeling in my mouth as well.
I love your nice plumminess on the nose, and almost on the palate. I almost get sort of a peppery touch on the finish that sort of underlines those tannins, but doesn't make them too powerful either. Now, these are wines also that you want to, some people drinking them on their own might find them a little bit too bold for their palate, but these are wines to pair with food. I mean, they are fine to sip like this. They're interesting. It's a great way to learn about them, to have them on their own before you pair. But I definitely think they really come into their own when you start to pair them. Here they said I have it in French. I have tourte à la viande de bœuf et de rognon. So
and steak and kidney pie
steak and
en
kidney
français or
pie.
en anglais.
That's a great
Yeah.
choice. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's
You get those savory elements from the kidney that I think would go really, really well there. Yeah, this is obviously something that one of those bold reds that go so well with, you know, red meat. And we do tend to offer, and I don't mean we as an opinion, but wine experts in general, sommeliers in general, still fall into the trap of often proposing meat pairings. And not all of us are eating that much meat these days. So you don't have to feel like you can't drink bold reds because you're not eating meat. There are lots of vegetarian options that go well with these bold reds, but you'd want quite a robust vegetable choice. So you're not going to go with something very delicate and soft. You're going to go with root vegetables, mushrooms, maybe eggplant, things that have earthy, full flavors, maybe roasting them to bring out that sort of caramelization, to bring more bold flavors to them, you know, so bringing some herbs into there. And there's all kinds of vegetable stew, roasted vegetable type dishes that would go really well with these as well.
Yeah, and the sauces help too, right? You get a nice robust
Absolutely.
sauce with that, and it helps stand up with the wine. I mean, I people here will have heard it before, and you may not have, Jacky, but just when you get that perfect food and wine pairing where it makes the wine sing and the food sing, it's a transcendent experience. Just fantastic.
Michael and I did a wine tasting in Montreal together on Thursday, and we were pouring a beautiful Pinot Noir from Oregon. And we were just loving it. You know, most of the people tasting with us were loving it. And this one woman, she wasn't so sold on it. She said, I like it, I don't love it. You know, and wine's all about personal taste, so that's fine. But I said to her, before you give up on it, just go. There was a beautiful plate of charcuterie and cheeses on the table. And I said, just go and try it with some of these hard cheeses and some of those cured meats. And taste the wine again and see what you think. And she came back, her eyes wide open, and said, the wine was completely different. Yeah, it's so important to, before you give up on a wine, to try it with food and see how you like it.
Yeah, and call Jacky and ask her what you should.
That's what I'm having with it. Absolutely.
Yes, that's right.
So we had the Grenache on its own. We had the Carignan on its own. And we
one
tasted,
more to go.
Yeah, one more to go is the Fitu. So Fitu, as we said, is if anybody's familiar with Languedoc and its different designations, appellations. So Fitu is right next to the Corbière in the southern, moving towards the west side of the Languedoc. And you're getting a lot of schist soils here. This is, as you know, those who were on this trip, there's a hillier part of Fitu. Some is lower lying, but where Katie is a little bit hillier. So you're getting some cooler breezes and cooler temperatures from the altitude. And Grenache, Carignan, these are major grapes here. And then you got a little bit of Syrah that'll bring you that lovely sort of tannic spinal column backbone to the wine, a little bit of dark fruit as well from the Syrah. Often some pepper, Grenache, as I said, which gives you the plump sort of rounded the body, and bright, almost baked fruit. And then Carignan, which can give you that sort of pepperiness and savory qualities as well. And so we tasted the wines separately, the grapes separately. Now we're tasting them from a specific place on specific sort of schist soils in this area of Fitu, all blended together. And what do you think, Michael? I don't know if you've had a sip yet.
Yeah, it's again, that question I asked was a bit leading because my favorite wines in the world are Bordeaux blends, and it's because of the blend, right? And so this blend I find more satisfying or more pleasing, I guess, than the individual wines on their own. And I wish Katie were able to have joined us because she would talk a little bit, but I think you can tell from what you're tasting about why she chose these wines to go together, right? Yeah. They support each other in different ways. And
they do. They support each other without overshadowing each other. You can pick up individual elements from each grape, but they're not standing apart. They're really harmonious. And I think you get all that lovely dark fruit that you were getting on the other two. I get some almost dark chocolate, sort of cocoa notes on the palate that are really pretty. The tannins are there, but they're not overpowering. They're not drying in any way. And yeah, just really harmonious, really tasting very, very well, if you do.
a filet au boeuf avec sauce de vin rouge. Right?
Red wine sauce and a beef.
So a hanger steak with red wine sauce for the Anglophones, and it's I've never really thought of hanger steak as a Canadian cut of beef. Let's talk food, because I mean, a hanger steak is it's not the most tender of steaks, and so then you tend to cook it differently, and you get my mouth's watering. You actually you get so much more flavor from it, and there's some people who won't even eat tenderloin, right? Because it tends to be it's all about the tenderness, right? It's not necessarily about the taste, where hanger steak is more about the taste, and it does stand up so beautifully and gets harmonious with these three grapes together, right?
Absolutely. And it's one of the reasons we're always talking about red meat with wines that have a certain tannic presence, is because there's actually a geeky scientific reason behind it. It's really the proteins, the chains of proteins in the meat are going to interact with the compounds in the tannins, and actually they break each other down. So the steak will taste softer, and the wine will also, the tannins will resolve a little bit, and be a little
There's
bit
less
more
harder
fluid.
edge to it, right? That's
Exactly. So there is a reason. It's not just matching the weight of the food and the weight of the wine. It's actually the interaction between these tannins and the proteins in the meat.
Hanger steak and potato chips.
There you go. There's a pairing for you. I love this exercise. I think it's fantastic to taste the grapes individually and then to taste them together. And I think there's definitely going to be fans of all three different styles. Alana says she loves the Fitu, and I definitely agree with you there. I think it's just a really well-made wine, and it's unfortunate that Katie wasn't able to give us her winemaking secrets, but I understand.
And it always sounds self-serving, but I mean, I think that this case of wine was just such a ridiculously good deal.
Yeah, that's another thing from the Languedoc, is this value is just
insane. When you can taste wines of this caliber for the price point of the Masters case across the country, whether you're in Alberta where it's 50 cents to more expensive provinces in the country, it's just such a great value. And
when I tasting it again, I was talking about those notes of cocoa that I was getting on it. You get all that really ripe dark fruit, but it doesn't feel jammy on the palate. It's got that you've got the lovely fruit ripeness, but there's no sweetness. It's not cloying. It's not heavy. And this is, even with the freshness that comes from the altitude, it's still a very hot area. And it's still a big wine, but it's a big wine that, through those slight bitters and the reasonably fresh acidity, you're getting beautiful balance here.
Yeah, it's great. So I'm going to ask people if you have any questions leading up. We're about to sign off. So if you have any questions, please put them into the chat. We'll give you a couple of minutes for that, and we can talk about wine jokes if you want. But no, I think Gord has one. Oh, that I agree, Gord, completely. That Jacky, thank you. That's the way you describe the wine just makes it so accessible, and really,
thank you.
It really gets us to understand it at a much deeper level, which is exactly what these are about, and exactly what the Masters Case program's about, is that we get to learn more and more about individual variety. Now, I called it a varietal, and you called it a variety. Let's talk about that. So my understanding.
This is the bee in the bonnet of the Institute of Master of Wine.
But let me tell you how I've distilled it, is that it's a variety until it's been made into a wine. So when you're growing it, it's a variety. And then when you've made a single wine with it, it's now a varietal. Am I anywhere close?
Well, according to the more pedantic members of the Institute of Masters of Wine, they would say that when we're talking about the grape itself, because even when you made it into wine, you're still referring to the grape. It's always a grape variety. And when you're using varietal, it's because it has varietal character. It has, you're referring to it. What's the difference? It's the difference between an adverb and a.
This is I don't know.
This is where I have to scratch my head.
Don't ask that question,
English
Jacky.
class
Let's move on.
But
Okay.
according
It's,
to the English contingent at the Master of Wine, it is
Yeah.
incorrect to call a grape variety varietal. They say
Ever?
you can say that it has varietal characteristics. But, you know, you're
really?
tasting a reason you're saying.
Oh,
well, it's
so
really
you're
market.
saying that they're suggesting not to call it a varietal, which would make it a noun, right? That,
Yeah, it's not a noun.
okay.
It's a,
Oh, very
yeah,
interesting.
it's a descriptor. It's a,
Varietal. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, I'll do more
But
research.
it has
and
been. I mean, so it's become such a common thing to call it a varietal that it's, you know, gone into.
I think we, and I mean
Call it a
everybody
grape.
on the call, I think we're getting together again on January 7th to do
Yep.
another one, and I'll have an answer on the variety varietal at that time.
Okay, perfect.
It'll be
We'll wait
definitive.
with bated breath.
That's right. It will be the Opimian decision. And so I will. I see that the Ross. When are the Jones wines being offered by Opimian? And unless David knows and he'll unmute himself, yeah, I think they are in the sixes, right? So it's going to be 306, I think. No, 307.
I definitely haven't tasted Languedoc yet. So
Yes, that's right. So that'll be coming up. What I can assure you, Ross, is that Katie's Wines will be with us again. That we've got a really solid relationship with Katie, and we look forward to offering her wines again.
okay.
And Alana was talking about our food pairings, and I agree too. And she thanks you, Jackie, as well. And food pairings from Mandy. Oh, so okay, but it would be nice
A
to
little more
have some
simple.
suggestions that are not quite so far out. That's an
Yeah.
interesting idea. Is that
You could give two. You could offer
Yeah,
something, you know, you
yeah.
can offer, sometimes the best thing to do is just offer ingredients, and then you can say, like a recipe like this, you know, you can say
Yes.
this goes well with
with
red meats, hard cheeses,
heavy
and
cheeses,
this, and
right?
here's a
Or,
recipe idea.
yeah. And you know, that is one thing that we talk about at marketing all the time, is that you'll notice that there's often a recipe that pairs something with one specific wine, and we don't do it every single month. It takes up an entire page, and space in the catalog is very, very important. But we do try and offer a recipe that way, and I think that's brilliant. And typically what you'll see is, even though it's offered by a professional chef, I'll make it at home and do a video so that people can see it on YouTube as well. And I really enjoy doing those for everybody, and I always get such nice comments, so it's very nice. So thank you, everybody. So as we said, we'll be back together again on the 7th of January. It's a Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern. And thank you so much, Jackie. I agree with everybody that this was fantastic. And
thank you for having me. Nice to taste with all of you today. Thank you, David, for running the board for us. Appreciate it. And thank you, most importantly, to the Opimian members to join us. I mean, sharing the joy of wine makes us the best job on the planet. I've said that before, and really appreciate the opportunity. So, and thanks, Twyla. It's great. Yeah, okay, I'm on my way over, Twyla, but she's in Calgary, so that I'm not sure I'll get there. But yeah, that's right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye,
Have a good
everybody.
afternoon, evening. Ciao, ciao.